Welcome, everyone. Okay, let's just dive right into this explainer, because today we're unpacking one of the absolute most famous urban legends in nautical history, the Bermuda Triangle. You know the whispers, you've seen the movies, and honestly, you've probably wondered yourself if there's actually any truth to the tales. Well, we're going to break the whole thing down, the myth, the geography, the actual facts. By digging directly into the historical record, we're going to completely separate the sensationalized fiction from the physical reality of what's really going on out there on the water.
Setting the scene here, we really have to ask, what is actually happening in these dark, stormy oceans to cause such terrifying disappearances? For gosh, over half a century now, the public has been totally haunted by this idea that if you sail or fly into this one specific patch of ocean, you might just vanish without a trace. No distress signals, no wreckage, just gone. The stories paint this picture of a hungry, unpredictable ocean that literally swallows massive cargo ships and advanced aircraft whole. But, we can't approach this like a ghost story. We need to look at it as an investigative puzzle. So what are the variables?
Well, before we can solve the mystery, we kind of need to establish the scene of the crime. Here's the thing. The Bermuda Triangle isn't an officially recognized geographic territory. You're not going to find it labeled on any standard map. Instead, it's this loosely defined region that people generally anchor between Miami, Florida, San Juan, Puerto Rico, and the island of Bermuda. Basically, by drawing lines on a map, people tried to box in the unknown. The claim was that within this massive expanse of deep blue water, the rate of ships and planes going missing was mathematically abnormal.
All right, let's get into Section 1, the Bermuda Triangle legend. Now, what's really fascinating here is how the myth actually took shape, especially when you contrast the broad urban legend with the real tragedy. On one hand, we have the wild stuff, right? Extraterrestrial abductions, interdimensional portals, ancient Atlantean technology, you name it. But on the other hand, we see what actually fueled those theories, real heartbreaking events. The most famous case, of course, is Flight 19. This was a squadron of 5 U.S. Navy torpedo bombers that completely vanished during a routine training flight back in 1945. 14 men disappeared, plus another 13 on the rescue plane that was sent to find them. When you take a highly publicized, deeply tragic event like that and you start filtering it through the lens of an urban legend, you can instantly see how the public starts to believe something sinister is hunting in those waters.
But is this patch of ocean actually cursed, or is there something else entirely at play here? Look, it's so easy to get swept up in the lore, to look at a tragedy like Flight 19 and just immediately assume the paranormal. But we're looking for empirical evidence here. So let's push past the ghost stories and look at the actual facts.
Which brings us to Section 2, plausible natural explanations.
Okay, so we can immediately start dismantling the supernatural claims with some pretty straightforward science. First off, severe weather. This region is literally Hurricane Alley. Sudden, violent microbursts and massive storms are super common. Second, human error. The ocean is incredibly vast and unforgiving, and spatial disorientation, especially for pilots back in the day like those on Flight 19, is a well-documented, fatal phenomenon. Third, we've got the Gulf Stream currents. Think of this as a massive, fast-moving river right in the middle of the ocean. If a plane crashes or a boat goes down, the Gulf Stream can carry that wreckage miles and miles away in just a matter of hours, which perfectly explains why evidence is so rarely found. And finally, compass variations. In certain parts of the triangle, true north and magnetic north actually align perfectly. If a navigator isn't actively compensating for that, they are going to get lost. You combine these 4 elements together, and suddenly the disappearances don't seem quite so supernatural, do they?
And to put it all into perspective, you have to realize that the Bermuda Triangle sits smack in the middle of some of the most heavily traversed shipping lanes on planet Earth. Every single day, thousands of commercial flights, massive cargo ships, cruise liners, private boats, they all pass right through this so-called cursed region without a single issue. Get this, when marine insurance companies calculate their rates, they don't even charge an extra dime for vessels passing through the Bermuda Triangle. Statistically speaking, it's literally no more dangerous than any other heavily traveled patch of the ocean. The sheer, massive scale of completely safe daily traffic visually crushes the whole death trap idea.
Let's move on to Section 3, the role of fiction.
This is where it gets really interesting. If we track the chronological evolution of this myth, we see exactly how it became pop culture fact. It started out normally enough in the early sailing days. The sea is dangerous, so sailors were naturally cautious. Then those real mid-20th century vanishments happened. But the absolute turning point? The media response. Sensational claims started hitting the pulp magazines. Writers would take entirely unrelated sinkings from totally different decades, some of them weren't even geographically inside the triangle, by the way, and they'd bundle them all together. Then, throughout the 1970s, authors started writing best-selling books, basically just copy-pasting and building upon each other's exaggerations. They weren't doing scientific research. They were engineering a myth from the ground up, all because mystery sells.
So yeah, the legend was essentially invented and fueled by fiction authors. When those pulp magazine writers coined catchy phrases like the Bermuda Triangle and slapped sensationalized words like vortex or cursed on the cover, it completely hijacked the human brain. We are hardwired to love a good, scary story about the unknown. And what the source material clearly shows us is that these writers purposefully omitted the mundane facts. For example, they take a ship that sank during a documented raging Category 5 hurricane, but in their story, they just write that it mysteriously vanished in calm seas. They didn't just report on a mystery, they entirely fabricated the most chilling parts of it.
Now let's tie this all together in Section 4, Myth versus Reality.
When we put the myth side by side with reality, we get our final verdict. On the myth side, you have this ocean that defies the laws of physics, a weird anomaly that just randomly erases human life. But over on the reality side, grounded by actual source analysis, the truth is glaringly obvious. It's not a cursed body of water. It is a legend that was merely invented by authors of fiction. Really, it's just an incredible testament to the power of print media and narrative momentum. The ocean is dangerous enough all on its own, thanks to currents, unpredictable weather, and human mistakes. It never actually needed a supernatural curse. It just needed a really good marketing campaign by 1970s paperback writers.
Think about the sheer scale of that for a second. For decades, practically the entire world believed an ocean was cursed, all because a few writers decided to stretch the truth for a good story. It brilliantly highlights how easily sensationalist fiction can just completely overwrite reality in our collective memory. So I want to leave you with this. If one of the most famous, globally recognized mysteries in human history can be entirely debunked just by checking shipping schedules, ocean currents, and pulp magazine publishing dates, what other pop culture legends are out there right now just waiting to be busted by mundane facts? Keep analyzing, keep asking questions, and never underestimate the power of a well-told story. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.